password is...
Hertogh. What was it? Hertogh. H-R-U-T-H. Yeah, I need to spell the word for him. Hertogh.
Pass.
Let's say what? Makeup. Oh my god. I did not know what the Hertogh Riots were. Okay, so I'm sorry Ariana Conda for letting our team down during the House of Miss Joachim collab. So today for penance, I'm going to be talking about a little bit of Singapore history and what the Hertogh Riots were. Okay, and I think it has quite a lot to do with our National Day, which is coming up, because it reflects how we achieve racial harmony, or the semblance of, in Singapore. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today while I do a face paint of Durian, because the Durian is indigenous to this region, okay? And it's a bit yellow on the inside too. I overthought that. Okay, and if that's something you want to see, don't forget to give me a big thumbs up and subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for this post notifications. Trying something new today, so makeup and history. If you want to see more of that, please leave down in the comments below what you want me to talk about, alright? I'm going to try my best. I'm not a historian, but here goes nothing. Alright, okay, so blocked everything off, and I'm just gonna get right into face painting, okay? So I'm just gonna have to put my hair away, start sketching stuff out. So I'm gonna do a Durian look. I really want to try this technique by this artist called Arnaldo JPEG, okay? He's a really cute guy from, I'm not sure where he's from. I think Spain or something, but he does all this face painting, body paintings, and he does his little spike technique with prosade, which I've been wanting to try for a long time. Okay, I haven't ordered the stuff. I'll have something in my stories on my Snatchery profile of how I made these spikes, okay? So I'm just gonna go right into it. Just prime first. So I'm using a milk primer today. This is good because it's a little bit sticky. Well, in my mind, it's good for these heavy foundation looks. Okay, and I'm gonna do a bit of a skull makeup. So I'm gonna be sketching out this place. I'm going to start my eyes and going to crack open the Durian. Okay, and my nose is super sweaty, so I might leave that to the end. Alright, so the Maria Hertogh Riots. These are riots that actually happened in Singapore in 1950, okay? So that's 15 years before Singapore actually became independent. Okay, and Singapore, as for those people who do not know, is not in China, okay? It's not in China up there, it's all the way down here, okay, in the Southeast Asia, okay? Right in between Malaysia and Indonesia. And the indigenous people of Singapore are called the Orang Laut, okay? And these people are usually Malay. But there were apparently Chinese graves that were found in Singapore in the 19th century, so I think there were some Chinese people here at the time too. But majority of them were Malay. Today, Singapore is majority Chinese, okay, which does tend to stoke a little bit of racial tensions, which I'll talk about later, okay? But during the time in Singapore in 1950, the majority of the people here were actually Muslim Malay. And Singapore at the time was a British colony. So the British were actually here running the country at the time, okay? And the Hertogh Riots were actually a result of a lot of anti-British, anti-colonial sentiment, okay, which I'll talk about here today. And it's also an example of decolonization and how indigenous people rise up, okay, to fight against colonial rule. Okay, I'm going to start first by getting my green base down. Okay, so I'm going to go in my highlights first, which is my yellow. I'm not going to fill in all these parts yet. Okay, so Maria Hertogh was actually a young girl at the time. Okay? She was a daughter of a Dutch soldier and a Eurasian mother. At the time when Singapore was actually under British colonial rule, Indonesia had a lot of Dutch influences, okay? And Maria's father actually came here as a soldier to fight during World War II. Maria's mother, her name was Adeline, and she was actually Scottish Javanese, okay? And she was she was Eurasian. Okay, going in green. Okay, and actually they had quite a number of children. I think at the time when Adeline and Maria's father had 5 children, Maria's father was actually captured by the Japanese at the time and imprisoned, okay, in a prisoner of war camp, a POW camp. And so Maria's mother, Adeline, had to look after the children herself, okay? And she moved in with her mother, okay, in Indonesia. And at the time, they were living in Java, which is down here in Indonesia, okay, quite near Jakarta. And Maria was actually baptized, okay? She was baptized as a Catholic, okay, with her mother when she was very young. And in 1942, okay, when Maria was 5 years old, Adeline gave birth to a sixth child, a boy, okay, and at the time, for unknown reasons, or maybe because she couldn't cope, she actually sent Maria to live with this Malay woman called Che Amina in Terengganu in Malaysia, so up here, okay, so she was sent to live there. Apparently, she was only supposed to have lived there for a few days, but that dragged on for a while. According to Adeline, she tried to get Maria back a few times. Okay, she tried crossing borders and everything to try to get Maria back, but she was stopped because she didn't have the right papers, and she was also ended up in an internment camp. Both Maria's parents were actually stuck in internment camps during the time, okay, and it was very hard to get them free. From the internment camp, apparently Adeline tried to get her mother to get Maria back, but apparently all these things were delayed, and Maria ended up living 8 years with Che Amina and growing up as a Muslim. And here, Che Amina actually renamed Maria into Nadra or Nadira. Che Amina and Maria actually moved around the region quite a lot. Che Amina was actually working as an interpreter for the Japanese military police at the time, okay, and she moved around Malaysia and Jakarta. Maria, or Nadra at the time, moved along with her. Okay, and she attended Muslim school, she grew up with Muslim girls, she wore the Muslim headdress, and Nadra was considered Che Amina her mother at the time when she was quite young. A lot of memories from my Audrey 2 face paint. In 1945, when Maria was 8, okay, the war ended, okay, and her father was released. And he and Maria's mother, Adeline, tried to get Maria back. By this time, there was a lot of resistance, okay, from Che Amina. Okay, put my face tapes on, and I'm just going to go into the eyes now. Yeah, so Maria's father and her mother tried to get her back, but couldn't, okay? Che Amina wouldn't give her up. So they actually went back to Holland, okay? And from there, they tried to get in touch with the Dutch consulates, the embassies and everything to try to get Maria back. And through a lot of political and diplomatic wranglings, okay, Che Amina and Maria were actually brought to Singapore to attend a High Court hearing about where Maria was going to go. Okay, I'm going to use the At Forest Side palette, this really, really deep green here to give myself a nice green smoky eye, big smoky eye. And I think I'm not going to do brows. Famous last words. Okay, so this green called Emerald City. Get this on a wet base so it's nice and intense. And I'm going to powder everything later. So in April 1950, after they attended the High Court hearing, the High Court actually separated Che Amina and Maria, okay, while they were deliberating. And Maria was placed into the custody of the Social Welfare Department at the time. She underwent several evaluations at the Middle Road Hospital at the time. Ultimately, custody was awarded to her birth parents, okay, to Adeline and her husband. Throughout this whole thing, Maria, or Nadra, well, she was 13 at the time, actually kept saying that she wanted to stay with Che Amina. Okay, and so I'm sure it was really, really traumatic for everyone involved. And Amina actually said that Adeline gave Maria, or Nadra, up for adoption. But unfortunately, there were no papers that supported this. Yeah, it was very, very hearsay. So we really don't know what happened at the time, but you know, it got really, really messy. Okay, so Che Amina submitted an appeal to the High Court at the time. And this time, the High Court ruled in favor of Maria staying with Che Amina. So they were overjoyed and they went back and they were reunited. And of course, there were counter appeals by the birth parents. But by the time they went back to court, okay, Che Amina actually had Maria marry a 21-year-old teacher at the time, okay? And under Islamic law, girls that had reached puberty, which Maria had already reached puberty, were allowed to get married or get betrothed. So she was actually married to this 21 teacher. She was 13 at the time, okay? So she was actually considered his wife and a Muslim woman. So a lot of these things don't sit very right with today's, I'm sure, a lot of values that we have today. So I would reserve judgment, okay, and just listen to the story, okay? Don't get too worked up about all these things. Let's just keep our heads, okay, and don't rush into judgment quite yet. I'm going to go off and just powder all this for now, okay, and I'll be right back. All right, so set everything, and now I'm just going in with the green. I'm using my new Bloomin' Lovely palette from Sample Beauty. Okay, there's a range of greens here that I'm going to be using to contour. Okay, so using hay fever right now, just to put some green back into this. Okay, I'm gonna use a brownish shade to contour. I'm gonna try a light one first. It's Puffball. Oh, it's very, very pigmented. This gives me this woody shade, a bit like a durian. It wouldn't end up looking like a turtle. Alright, yeah, so Maria was married, okay, under Islamic law to this 21-year-old man. And it was obviously a tactic to solidify her relationship with Che Amina and to prevent her birth parents from claiming her back. Okay, so yeah, that was super controversial at the time. Okay, she was only 13 at the time. But whenever you spoke to Maria, Maria said that she was all for it and she wanted to stay with her new husband and Che Amina. Of course, everything was brought back to the courts, okay? Her birth parents contested that again. This time, the day after the marriage, they were actually issued a summons to report back to court. Okay, but Che Amina, the time in this region, Muslim Islamic law was actually very, very predominant, okay, here. She ignored all these requests, okay, because she believed the marriage was enough to, solve the problem. But then the British government at the time actually sent people to bring them back forcibly. And a summons was taken out, okay, to bring Maria back to Singapore. I'm going to use the yellow, Save the Bees from my Sample Beauty. Pump up some of the highlights. Okay, yeah, and so there was a second hearing for Maria Hertogh. Okay, and this time the judge actually said that this marriage was actually annulled, okay, because she was too young, she was a minor, and her father did not give up Maria because he was a prisoner of war at the time. So he did not give up Maria, so he was still the legal father. So if he did not give Maria permission to convert to Islam and to marry a man under Islamic law, this marriage was null and void, okay? So she was actually given back to the parents. And of course, Maria was distraught, Che Amina was distraught, and appealed again, okay? And during this appeal, Maria was actually sent to live in a convent. Okay, and you can see where this is going. Okay, I'm gonna go and prepare some stuff off camera quickly and I'll be right back. All right, finish off my eyes a little bit, okay, this smoky eye. And I've made this prosate mixture with some cryosil and put it in a piping bag. I'm gonna see whether I can try to get this to look like spikes. Okay, this is gonna get very messy. It's a little bit difficult to get this all even. I'll try. Okay, and these tend to, I think they're supposed to dry darker, so hopefully. All right, so where was I? Yeah, so at this stage, Maria was in a convent, okay? And Adeline moved in to try to get closer to her. I think one big mistake here was that they actually let in press, okay? And pictures of Maria were taken surrounded by Christian imagery, okay? And this really, really angered a lot of the Muslims because she was considered Muslim because she had married under Islamic law. Okay, so that's a highlighted one. I have a little bit of a darker one here. It's starting to dry, so I've got to work fast. Around this time also, there were a lot of Muslim activist groups, okay, who were really sick and tired of the British meddling in Islamic affairs and local affairs. So they actually started to rally a lot of Muslims around this, okay, and they actually printed like newsletters and everything that stoked a lot of emotion at the time. This was probably one of the reasons why this garnered a lot of media attention, okay, and around the time, there was a lot of talk about this all over the world, okay? Apparently Muslim countries like Pakistan and everything all had their own opinions about Maria and Che Amina and the Hertoghs. They even wanted to use jihad, okay, to protest against this. And of course, this managed to rally a lot of devout Muslims. And by the time the last hearing was brought around, thousands of Malay Muslims gathered outside the court, okay, on the last day of the hearing. I mean, in the end, custody was given back to Maria's birth parents, okay, and Maria had to be seconded away to St. John's Island, which is an offshore island in Singapore, okay, and she was brought back to the Netherlands, and she was never seen in Singapore ever again. But the riots themselves, they were really, really violent, okay? They rioted for 2 days, okay, and a lot of people used this as an excuse to attack Eurasians or British people. Apparently, British diplomats and everything were dragged out in the streets and beaten, cars were overturned, and it got really, really ugly. And after the 2 days of rioting, there was a curfew that was implemented for 2 weeks. And the weeks following, there were, of course, investigations and everything held. Okay, apparently some of these people who were organizing the riots, they were actually charged for sedition, and some of them were actually sentenced to death. Okay, but none of them were put to death. They all got life in prison for inciting riots. Okay, I'm going to let all this dry a little bit, and I'm going to come back and talk about what happened in Maria after all this, okay? This looks like cool. Alright, okay, I got all my spikes on, let them dry a little bit, and I sprayed on a little bit of browns and greens just to give myself a little bit of texture. Now I'm going to go in and paint on my skeleton, my durian meat skeleton. Okay, I'll be using my Meron Paradise paints, white and mango, just mixing all that up a little bit. First, I'm going to go into my whites, okay, just to get a nice border around that. Okay, so Maria, or Nadra, moved back to the Netherlands, and apparently she had a pretty miserable life. She was depicted as pining for Malaysia and for Singapore, you know, for most of her entire life, and she never got along with Adeline. Okay, I think she hated her mother after this. She married several times. Apparently, she was also once arrested for trying to kill her husband. She had a bit of a tumultuous life. Okay, I gotta try not to look like a lizard. Later in life, Maria actually came back to Malaysia for a while. Came back to visit some of Cik Amina's family after Cik Amina passed away. Yeah, and she spoke fluent Malay throughout this time. There was even a documentary once on her life by Chinese Asian, and there's this clip of her speaking perfect Malay.
Saya tidak mau sama dia, saya benci. Kenapa dia ambil saya ke sini? Sekarang sudah buat ini, buat disusahin. Saya nggak mau. Dia tidak sayang saya. Itu yang dia kasih saya sama orang lain.
Okay, I'm gonna mix all this in with some of this mango. Okay, just to give it all a bit of a yellowish appearance. Just gonna get some of these colors down first. Maria actually died of leukemia in 2009, okay? And she's actually inspired a whole documentary, okay, on Channel News Asia. That's kind of like our CNN here. And also a play. One of our local playwrights called Alfian Siat. Okay, he wrote this play called Nadira. It's loosely based on these race relations and religion relations, and, you know, talking about religion and the state. The riots themselves, they actually did spark, okay, the need for independence of Singapore, okay, the end of British colonial rule here. Because I think people here were starting to realize that the British government didn't really care about them. They weren't sensitive to our cultural heritage and our cultural norms. Okay, that wasn't really the end of race riots. There were more race riots in Singapore after that. In 1964, there were some race riots which actually involved a procession for Hari Raya, the Muslim procession, and Chinese passerbys. This is probably a story for another video, but that actually preceded Singapore's independence in 1965. One of our founding fathers, Lee Kuan Yew, okay, took all this into account, okay, the Hertogh Riots, the race riots and everything. A lot of our policies these days are actually designed to promote racial integration and to prevent, okay, such sentiments as it was before. Okay, so I'm shading these to look like durian seeds. The durian flesh making up my skeleton. I also have some durian openings on my boobies. I'm gonna work on this a little bit more, I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm going into the blacks now. The spikes have dried pretty much the same color as my base, which is good, okay? So, look like a spiky lizard more like a lizard than a durian. Oh shit. And so yeah, the Maria Hertogh riots were one of the things that really shaped the way Singapore deals with race. Okay, Singapore right now is majority Chinese and with a lot of Christian influence in the middle of an area which is very predominantly Muslim. Okay? So we really do have to tread quite carefully, okay, not to stoke emotions and stuff like that ended up in race riots. A lot of Singapore's policies are designed to be meritocratic and do not try to take into account race and everything, okay. There is like forced integration, as I mentioned earlier, okay. Our housing, there are racial quotas in public housing such that Chinese, Malay and Indians are encouraged to mix. all men serve national service here, okay? And during that time, we actually meet a lot of people outside our own class and race. Even our politics, there is like laws stating that there must be minority representation in our politicians as well. A lot of this has been criticized. A lot of it seems to be just maybe window dressing, okay? You cannot get rid of every single bit of structural racism and everything, and that's probably something that is I'll leave to more qualified people to discuss, okay? There are accounts such as Wake Up Singapore or Minority Voices that talk about things like that, and even comedians like Pretty Please talk about this all the time, okay? So I think there's definitely a lot of work to be done, okay? And I think the Maria Hertogh Riots is an example of how not to do things, okay? I'm just going to finish this up. I'm going to try and add some details and try to make this look a bit more Durian. I think I look more like a Skrull right now, okay? And I'll be back with the finished look. And I'm back! Alright, so that's my Durian face paint. Can't really see the spikes anymore, but I assure you they're all there. They're a bit collapsing now, and my earrings are not helping. Okay, and that's my Durian. I'm a Durian human who's broken open with flesh for a skeleton. And Durians are indigenous to this region, so that ties in to the Hertogh Riots. Okay, so I went and had to read up a lot and learned all about the Hertogh Riots because I messed up during the House of Miss Joachim game. Okay, so if you learned something today about the Hertogh Riots, leave down in the comments below what you think. Okay, and you know, I think this whole story is right for a musical. I think Alfian Sa'd, although he wrote a play for it, adapted into a musical. It sounds quite epic, you know, what happened, and a lot of lessons learned as well. Alright, if you like this video, I didn't paint my hands, I didn't have time, this took 5 hours, okay? Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and leave a comment below, and turn on the post notification bell as well, alright? Okay, I'll see you next time. Bye! Durian woman. They won't let me on public transport. I guess Snatchween came early this year. Don't take me with alcohol either. Alright, check out my other videos. I did Audrey 2 body paint last year for Snatchween, and I just recently had a collab with Opera Tang. Check it out. Oh, and I've got a collab coming up for National Day too. That was delayed for the pandemic.